There is a place, far beyond the last grey edge of Ireland, where the sea no longer hurries. A place where the waves rise and fall as softly as a sleeping breath, and the light of evening never quite fades. Long ago, when the hills were wilder, and the old roads were little more than pale threads through heather and stone, people spoke of that place in low voices by the fire. They called it Tir Nanog, the land of youth. It was no ordinary kingdom, no shore a traveller could find with a map and a steady hand. It waited somewhere beyond mist, beyond longing, beyond the known curve of the world. Some said it lay beneath the sea, where silver towers shone in the deep green light. Some said it floated beyond the western waves, under a sky where no shadow grew long. And some said it could only be reached when the heart was quiet enough to hear the music that came from far away. Tonight, we will follow that music, gently, slowly, as the evening settles over ancient Ireland and the first stars begin to open above the darkening hills. Imagine the land as it was then. The fields are small and uneven, held by old stone walls silvered with lichen. The grass is wet from a day of soft rain. Mist rests low in the hollows where streams move quietly among reeds and willow roots. Far off, the sea breathes against the shore. It rose and fell in the dark with a deep, patient sound. Above the western coast, the clouds are loosening. Their edges glow faintly, as though the sun has left a little of its gold behind. Rooks move homeward across the sky, black wings passing over the fields. Somewhere in the distance, a dog gives one gentle bark, then is still. The air smells of rain, turf smoke, salt, and green earth. Across the land, in small round houses and halls of timber and stone, fires are being tended for the night. People draw closer to the hearth. A child leans against a grandfather's knee. A woman folds a woven cloak across her lap. A man looks into the embers and remembers stories he has known since he was young. Outside, the moon rises slowly. Inside, a voice begins. The voice begins with the calm certainty of someone opening a door into memory. And the tale begins with a young man named Oisín. Oisín was the son of Fionn MacCool, the great leader of the Fianna, those wandering hunters and warriors of old Ireland. Yet it is best not to imagine them first in battle or in the loudness of legends. Tonight, let us see them at rest. Let us see them on a quiet evening in a green valley beneath the mountains. Their horses are grazing near a stream. Their hounds lie stretched in the grass, eyes half closed, ears twitching at moths and distant birds. Spears are leaned against an ash tree. Cloaks are folded. A low fire burns, sending one fine line of smoke into the blue dusk. The Fianna have travelled far that day, over ridges of fern and stone, through oak woods where the leaves whispered over their heads, and across open hills where the wind smelled of bog myrtle and rain. Now, at last, they are quiet. Fionn sits by the fire, his hair touched with the pale light of age and wisdom. His face is calm, weathered by years of sun and storm. Around him, his companions speak softly, as people do when the day's work is done and the night has not yet fully come. And near them sits Oisín, young, strong, and thoughtful. He has the grace of someone raised among wild things. He knows the shape of deer tracks in wet ground. He knows where the salmon rest below a bend in the river. He knows the names of hills, the moods of weather, and the silence that falls just before dawn. He is also a poet. And because he is a poet, the world reaches him in more than one way. He hears meaning in the cry of curlews. He sees memory in the old stones. He feels in the changing light on water something almost like a voice. On this evening, as the Fianna rest beside the fire, Oisín looks west. The sky there is clear now. A long band of gold lies over the horizon, fading into rose, then violet, then the deep blue of early night. The sea is not visible from where he sits, but he can feel it, as people in Ireland often can. A presence beyond the hills, a brightness, a breath, a wide unknown. Perhaps even before she came, some part of him was listening. Perhaps the heart sometimes hears a hoofbeat long before the ear does. At first there is only the ordinary quiet of evening, the fire settling, the horses shifting in the grass, the river moving over stones. Then one of the hounds raises its head, another follows. A horse turns toward the west. The men fall silent. Across the valley, from the place where the light is thinnest and the mist gathers in pale ribbons, something is approaching. It comes slowly, with a sound so clear and delicate that it seems almost made of light. Hooves on earth, slow, measured, coming nearer. Through the mist rides a white horse. Its coat is brighter than moonlit water. Its mane flows like sea foam in a soft wind. Each step it takes seems hardly to press the grass beneath it. And upon its back is a woman unlike any the Fianna have ever seen. She is clothed in white and silver, and her hair shines with the pale gold of sunlight caught in a shallow stream. Around her, the air seems quieter. The evening seems to lean toward her. Even the fire, for a moment, appears to burn more softly. The warriors rise, but none reach for a weapon. There is no threat in her arrival, only wonder. The white horse comes to a stop at the edge of the firelight, and the woman looks upon them with eyes as calm as a western sea beneath stars. Fionn, wise enough to know that some guests come from beyond the reach of ordinary questions, speaks gently. "Lady," he says, "you are welcome among us. Tell us your name and from what land you have come." The woman's gaze moves over the Fianna. It rests briefly on Fionn with respect. Then it turns to Oisín. and when she speaks, her voice is low and musical, like water moving through hidden stones. "I am Niamh," she says, "Niamh of the golden hair. I have come from Tir na Nog, the land of youth, beyond the western sea." At these words, a stillness falls over the valley, for every heart there knows the name. Tir na Nog, the land where summer does not fade, the land where sorrow passes like mist in morning light, the land where no one grows old and music hangs in the air like the scent of flowers after rain. Niamh looks at Oisín, and in her expression there is both certainty and tenderness. "I have heard of you," she says. "Oisín, son of Fionn. I have heard your songs carried over the sea. I have heard of your courage, your gentleness, and your love for the living world. I have come to ask you to ride with me." No one speaks at first, for a question from another world cannot be answered quickly. The river moves, the horses breathe. The fire gives a soft sigh as a piece of wood falls inward. Oisín looks at Niamh. She is standing before him in the firelight, and beyond her he feels a whole, unknown shore. "What lies there?" he asks. Niamh smiles, but only a little, as if the answer is too wide for words. "A country of green hills and shining plains," she says. "Orchards that never wither, rivers clear as glass, houses bright with music, no illness, no age, no grief that cannot be soothed. There are feasts beneath apple trees and horses that run faster than the wind, and dawns so gentle they seem to rise from inside the heart." The Fianna listen in silence. What they feel is not greed or envy, but the old ache that comes when human beings hear of a place untouched by loss. For even the bravest among them know the nature of this world. The green leaf browns, the warm hand cools, the song ends. The traveller must one day leave the road. And yet here is Niamh speaking of a place where perhaps the song goes on. Oisín turns to his father. Fionn does not command him. He does not forbid him. In the old tales, the wise know that certain paths cannot be chosen by another. Fionn only looks at his son, and in that look is pride, worry, love, and the quiet sadness of all fathers who know that children, even beloved children, must one day ride beyond them. Oisín kneels beside him. For a moment, he is not the poet of the Fianna, nor a hero of old Ireland. He is simply a son. "I do not know how long I will be gone," he says. Fionn places a hand on his shoulder. "Then remember us," he says, "and remember the hills that made you." Oisín bows his head. "I will." Then he rises. The hounds stand as he passes, as though they too understand that a farewell is moving through the night. One presses its head against his hand, Oisín strokes its ears, and smiles softly. There are no great speeches, no loud cries, only the hush of a valley holding its breath. Niamh reaches down, and Oisín takes her hand. He mounts the white horse behind her. The horse stirs, lifting its bright head toward the west. For one moment, Oisín looks back. He sees the fire, his father, his companions, the hounds in the grass, the familiar dark shape of the hills, and all of it seems already touched by memory. Then the white horse begins to move, not away at first, but almost into the evening itself, across the valley, through the mist, past the last ash trees and the last stones warmed by the day. The land slopes westward, the night deepens, and the sound of the Fianna fades behind them until there is only the horse's steady rhythm and the distant breathing of the sea. There are journeys in the old stories that belong less to roads than to feeling. A horse may cross a field, a heart may cross from one life into another. So it was with Oisín. He rode behind Niamh through the soft darkness of Ireland, and everything he knew seemed to grow tender as they passed it. They crossed meadows where the grass shone with dew. They passed ruined stones older than any living name. They moved beneath oak branches where owls watched in silence. Once they came to a dark lake, still as polished iron, and the horse stepped lightly along its shore. The moon trembled in the water beside them. Reeds whispered. Somewhere far out in the dark, a swan called once, then fell silent. Niamh did not speak much. There was no need. Her presence was calm, and Oisín felt the strange comfort of travelling with someone who did not require the world to be explained. At last, near dawn, they came to the western shore. The sky was pale now, silver before sunrise. The sea stretched before them, wide and quiet, with long dark folds of water moving toward the sand. For a moment, Oisín thought the journey must end there. But Niamh turned the white horse toward the waves. "Do not be afraid," she said, and the horse walked on into the water. At first the foam washed around its hooves. Then the sea rose to its knees, then its chest. But the horse did not sink. It stepped upon the waves as if they were a meadow under moonlight. The water held them, softly, miraculously. Behind them, Ireland began to recede, the cliffs dark against the paling sky, the hills folded in mist, the shore growing smaller, quieter, more dreamlike with every step. Oisín looked back until he could no longer tell where land ended and cloud began. Then he looked ahead. Before them, the sea opened, and beyond it, far in the west, a golden light appeared. Not the harsh light of noon, not the red light of sunset, but a gentle, unearthly radiance, as though morning and evening had met in one endless hour. They rowed across the sea, The white horse moved without effort, its mane streaming the hind like foam. Beneath them, the deep water glimmered with shapes and colours Oisín had never seen. Silverfish moved below the surface like fallen stars. Great shadows passed far beneath, slow and peaceful. At times he thought he heard music rising from under the waves. Harps, perhaps. Or voices. Or the sea remembering all the songs ever sung beside it. The air was soft. The salt wind cooled his face, and little by little, the world he had known became less a place behind him than a song held in his chest. Niamh turned once and smiled. "We are near," she said. Ahead, the light widened, and through it, land appeared. Green hills sloping down to a shore of pale sand, trees heavy with blossom, rivers shining in the valleys. A city, or something like a city, gleaming in the distance with towers that seemed made of pearl, gold, and morning mist. Birds moved over the shore in bright, slow circles. The horse stepped from wave to sand, and Oisín entered Tirnanog. The old storytellers tried to speak of that place. They said the grass was greener than emerald. They said the apples glowed like little suns among the leaves. They said the air was filled with music that never grew tiresome, and every breeze carried the scent of flowers, honey, sea foam, and rain on warm stone. But perhaps the truest thing was simpler. The land itself seemed to welcome rest. There was no hurry in it, no decay, no heaviness of time pressing upon the heart. The leaves did not tremble with the knowledge of autumn. The faces of the people did not carry the shadow of age. Even the rivers seemed to move with a kind of joy, winding through meadows where horses grazed and white flowers opened under a sky of perfect blue. Niamh led Oisín through that bright country. People came to greet them, smiling as though they had long expected his arrival. They wore garments soft as cloud and bright as the inside of shells. Some carried harps, some carried baskets of fruit, some simply bowed their heads with warmth. No one shouted, no one crowded in. There was no confusion, only welcome. They brought him to a palace near the sea, though palace is perhaps too hard a word for something so gentle. It rose among trees and gardens with walls that glowed in the changing light. Its windows opened toward the western water. Vines climbed its pillars, fountains moved quietly in courtyards where birds drank from the basins and flew away unafraid. Inside, the halls were filled with golden warmth. There were tapestries woven with scenes of forests, starlight, swans, and islands. There were bowls of fruit that seemed always fresh. There were rooms where music drifted and faded like the tide. And there, Niamh's people welcomed Oisín as one of their own. Days passed, or what seemed like days, for in Tirnanog, time did not move as it moves in the mortal world. It did not bite. It did not steal. It did not gather dust in corners or silver in the hair. Time there was more like light on water, always moving, never leaving. Oisín lived among the people of that land, and for a while wonder filled every part of him. He rode with Niamh through valleys where the grass bent beneath their horses like green silk. They followed rivers to hidden pools where the water was so clear that pebbles at the bottom seemed close enough to touch. They walked in orchards at twilight where blossoms fell slowly through the air and never seemed to fade when they reached the ground. At night there were feasts. Not noisy feasts of boast and challenge, but gatherings full of music and warmth. Lamps glowed softly. Harps were played with fingers light as rain. Voices rose in songs so old they seemed to have begun before language. And Oisín, who had known many songs in Ireland, found that these songs entered him like moonlight. Sometimes he sang in return. He sang of the Fianna, of Fionn sitting by the fire, of hounds running over the hills, of Irish rain falling on bracken and stone, of rivers brown with peat, and mornings when mist lay white as wool across the valleys. The people of Tir na nÓg listened with still faces and shining eyes. Even in a land without sorrow, there was beauty in hearing of a world where every moment was precious, because it passed. Niamh listened most deeply of all, and in time, Oisín loved her. Perhaps he had loved her from the first moment he saw her ride through the mist. But love, like dawn, often arrives gradually, even when the light has been there from the beginning. He loved her for her beauty, yes, but more for her calm, for the way she could look across the sea and seem to understand both distance and home, for the way she knew when to speak and when to let silence be kind, for the way she moved through Tir na nÓg as though every tree and stone knew her name. And Niamh loved Oisín for his songs, for the mortal tenderness in him, for the way he could stand in an endless summer and still remember the smell of autumn leaves. They were married beneath apple trees in bloom. The sea was quiet that day. The sky was clear. White petals moved through the air like slow snow, though no cold came with them. Harps played, the people gathered, and Oisín stood beside Niamh, feeling that his life had widened beyond anything he had imagined. Afterward, they lived in peace. There are tales that speak of their children, bright and beautiful, raised in that gentle country. There are tales that say Oisín rode swift horses over silver plains and hunted without killing, and danced in halls where lamps burned with a soft golden flame. But tonight, we need not hurry through those years. Let them unfold slowly. One morning, Oisín wakes to the sound of birds in the garden. The window is open. A pale curtain moves in the breeze. Niamh sleeps beside him, her hair spread over the pillow like sunlight. Beyond the window, the sea shines. It is neither dawn nor full morning, but some perfect hour between. He rises quietly and steps outside. The grass is cool beneath his feet. The air smells of blossoms. In the orchard, fruit hangs heavy on the branches. Some apples are red as embers, some are gold as beeswax. Some are pale green with a blush like the first color in the sky. He walks without purpose. There is no need for purpose here. A stream runs beside the orchard, and he follows it down toward the shore. The water speaks over stones in a language older than thought. At the beach, the white horse grazes near the dunes. It lifts its head as Oisín approaches. He places one hand on its neck and feels warmth beneath the shining coat. Far across the water, the horizon lies quiet. There is no sign of Ireland. Only sea. Only distance. Yet for the first time in a long while, Oisín feels something stir within him. A small ache. It is not sharp and not exactly sorrow. It is more like the memory of a song heard from another room. He thinks of Fionn, of the Fianna, of hounds sleeping in grass, of turf smoke in the evening. He wonders whether his father thinks of him. He wonders whether the same moon he sees over Tir na Nog has risen over the hills of Ireland. Then Niamh comes quietly to stand beside him. She does not ask what he is thinking. She already knows. For love knows many things before words arrive. You miss them, she says. Oisín looks down at the sand. I do, he says, though I am happy here. I know. I thought the longing would fade. Niamh looks westward, though in that land all directions seem to contain some kind of light. Some longings fade, she says. Some become part of us. They are not always wounds. Sometimes they are roots. Oisín is quiet. The sea moves gently in and out. Niamh takes his hand. Stay, she says softly. There is love for you here. He turns to her then, troubled by the tenderness in her voice. I know. And I love you. For a while, that is enough. The ache passes back into the deep places of the heart. Days or months or years continue. In Tir na Nog, the orchards bloom and fruit at once. The rivers shine, the horses run. Music is played in the evenings, and soft laughter moves through the halls. Oisín becomes beloved in that land. He tells stories of Ireland beneath lantern light, and sometimes the people ask him to speak of rain. This surprises him at first, for rain to him has always been ordinary, a thing that falls on roads, cloaks, roofs, and fields. But in Tir na Nog, where weather is gentle and no season harms the trees, the rain of Ireland seems almost magical. So he tells them. He tells them of rain on the roof at night, steady and soft. Rain running down the face of old stones. Rain darkening the trunks of trees. Rain gathering in hoofprints on a forest path. Rain over the sea, turning the horizon grey until the whole world seems made of water and cloud. And as he speaks, he finds himself there again. Not fully, not in body, but in that inward place where memory keeps its own country. He remembers the smell of wet wool, the taste of smoke from a low fire, the cry of gulls over a winter shore. He remembers Fion's hand on his shoulder and the words spoken on the night he left. Remember us. Remember the hills that made you. One evening, long after the lamps have been lit, Oisín sits alone beneath an apple tree. The sky above Tunanog is deep and clear. Stars shine not coldly, but with a warm and patient light. Somewhere nearby, a harp is being played. Its notes fall slowly, with space between them. Niamh comes to him. She sits beside him in the grass. Neither speaks for a while. The apples glow faintly above them. At last, Oisín says, "I wish to see Ireland again." The words are quiet, but once spoken, they seem to change the air. Niamh closes her eyes. In her stillness there is sadness, but not surprise. "I feared this day would come," she says. "I would return only for a little while, to see my father, to see the Fianna, to look once more upon the hills. Then I would come back to you." Niamh looks at him, and the starlight makes her face seem both young and ancient. "Oisín," she says, "you have not been here a little while." He frowns gently. "What do you mean?" "In your heart, perhaps it feels like years, a few bright years. But the mortal world keeps its own count. While you have lived here in peace, time in Ireland has moved like a river in flood. The harp music seems farther away now." "How long?" Oisín asks. Niamh's voice is very soft. 300 years. The words enter him slowly, not like a blow, more like cold water spreading through cloth. 300 years. The fire in the valley, the hounds, the faces of his companions, his father's hand, all of it, not waiting just beyond the western sea, but lying deep beneath the passing of years. Oisín looks out across the dark garden. For a long while, he says nothing. He feels as though he has reached for a familiar door, only to find moss over the threshold, ivy on the walls, and no warm light inside. Niamh takes his hand. "I did not tell you before because I wished you joy," she says, "and because time is not felt here as it is there. I hoped your longing would rest." Oisín does not pull away. "I know," he says, and he does know. Still, the longing in him does not fade. It settles lower. It becomes quieter. It becomes heavier. He no longer expects to find the world as he left it. But he needs to see the hills again. He needs to breathe the rain. He needs to stand, even from the back of a horse, in the country that first taught him song. I must go, he says. Niamh bows her head. The grass around them is silver with starlight. At last she says, "Then you must take the white horse. It will carry you safely over the sea and through the mortal world. But listen to me, Oisín, and hold these words gently, as you would hold a flame from the wind." He turns to her. "When you reach Ireland, do not set foot upon the ground. Do not dismount. Do not let your body touch the earth. If you do, the years that have passed will find you all at once." Oisín listens. The warning settles between them. "I understand," he says. Niamh looks at him with sorrowful tenderness. "Then remember." The next morning, if morning it was, Tir na Nog seemed quieter than before. The sky was pale gold. The gardens were full of birdsong. The sea lay calm beyond the dunes. But a farewell had entered the air. The white horse stood ready by the shore. Niamh walked with Oisín through the orchard one last time before his journey. They did not speak much. Sometimes the deepest love has little need for words, especially when parting walks beside it. At the edge of the sand, Oisín turned to her. "I will return," he said. Niamh lifted her hand to his face. "And I will wait," she said. The white horse bowed its head. Oisín mounted. For one moment, he looked upon Tir na Nog. The bright hills, the shining towers, the orchards, the clear rivers, the land where sorrow had almost forgotten his name. Then he looked at Niamh. Her golden hair moved softly in the sea wind. He held the sight of her in his heart, and the horse stepped into the waves. The journey back was quieter. The sea seemed wider than before. Oisín rode alone over the water, and beneath him the white horse moved with the same gentle strength. But now the music under the waves was faint. The horizon did not glow with promise, but with distance. Behind him lay the land of youth. Before him lay Ireland, and between them the ocean breathed. He thought of time. He does not think of time clearly, or as something to be solved. He feels it moving quietly through him. In one land it had passed like sunlight through leaves. In another, it had moved like weather over stone. It had changed the roads. It had softened old names. It had carried familiar voices far away. And still, somehow, the songs he loved seemed warmer now. The mornings he remembered seemed brighter. His father's hand upon his shoulder seemed nearer and farther away at once. He did not understand it fully. He only felt it. The sea wind moved through his hair. He closed his eyes, and for a while he let the horse carry him. At last the shape of Ireland appeared. A dark line at first, then cliffs, then hills, blue and green beneath a sky heavy with cloud. Oisín's breath caught. Ireland. changed perhaps, aged, unknown, but still Ireland. The white horse stepped from the waves onto the strand. The sand was wet and shining. Gulls cried overhead. The wind carried the scent of rain, salt, grass, and peat. At once, Oisín felt the old world rush toward him, not as it had been, but as it was. The air seemed heavier here, dearer, rougher, mortal. He kept his place upon the horse, remembering Niamh's warning. Do not touch the ground. He rode inland. At first, he knew the shapes of things. A hill leaning against the sky. A river turning through a valley. The long shoulder of a mountain in the distance. But everything was altered. Forests had thinned. Old paths had vanished. New roads crossed the land where he remembered only heather and deer tracks. Small settlements stood in places where the Fianna had once made camp under stars. The people he passed wore unfamiliar clothing. Their speech had changed, though he could still hear Ireland within it, like an old melody beneath new words. Some stared at him. A tall rider on a shining white horse. A man with the bearing of an ancient tale. But Oisín moved gently among them, asking for the Fianna. Do you know Fionn MacCool? He asked one man by a roadside. The man looked bewildered. Fionn, he said, those are old stories. Old stories. Oisín rode on. He asked another, and another. Some knew the name, but only as legend. Some spoke of Fionn as a giant. Some as a hero. Some as a man who had never truly lived at all. The words moved through Oisín like cold rain. His father's voice had once been warm in the air. His father's hand had once rested on his shoulder. Now that living man had become a name passed between strangers. A name by the fire. A name in a tale. Oisín rode on. He did not argue. He did not explain. He carried the real Fionn quietly within him. The Finn who had sat by the flames. The Finn who had known the hills. The Finn who had said, "Remember us." He rode through valleys where he had hunted. He found old gathering places overgrown. He found a hill where the Fianna once trained, now quiet beneath sheep and wind. He came to a lake he remembered from youth. Its waters were darker than he recalled, or perhaps his heart was. He sat upon the white horse at the shore and watched clouds move across the surface. Once, long ago, he and his companions had rested there after a day of hunting. They had laughed. Someone had sung badly. The hounds had splashed through the shallows. Fionn had stood with his arms folded, looking out over the water, as if listening to the thoughts of the land itself. Now there was only the lake, the wind, the cry of one bird in the reeds, and Oisín, unable to step down. He spoke his father's name into the air. Fionn. The sound moved over the water and faded. No answer came. Only a small ripple touched the shore. Only the reeds bent gently in the wind. Only the lake kept the reflection of the sky. Oisín remained there for a long while. Then he turned the horse toward the east, riding slowly through the afternoon. Clouds gathered. A fine rain began to fall. It touched his face, and he almost smiled. Irish rain, soft and persistent. The kind he had once described beneath apple trees in Tionanogue. It darkened the stones along the road. It gathered in the folds of the land. It made every colour deeper. It rested on his hands like a blessing from the old world. Oisín rode until evening. As the light began to fade, he came upon a group of men working near a road. They were trying to move a great stone. It lay half sunk in the earth, heavy and stubborn. Perhaps part of an old wall, perhaps older still. The men strained against it with ropes and wooden poles. Their boots slipped in the wet grass, their shoulders bent. One laughed with exhaustion, another wiped rain from his face. Oisín stopped the white horse nearby. "Good men," he said gently, "what troubles you?" They looked up at him, surprised by the sight. "This stone," one called, "it will not move for us." Oisín looked at the stone. Once, such a thing would have been nothing to the Fianna. He remembered men lifting stones for sport, laughing in the red light of evening. He remembered his own strength, the easy power of youth in his limbs. And perhaps in that moment, he forgot how far he had travelled. Or perhaps kindness moved faster than caution. The men were tired. The rain was falling. The stone needed moving. Small reasons, simple reasons, human reasons. Oisín leaned from the saddle. "Stand aside," he said. "I will help you." He reached down. Keeping one hand in the horse's mane, he stretched toward the stone. His fingers found the edge of it. The stone was cold and wet beneath his palm. The horse shifted. The ground was slick. For one breath, everything held. Then the saddle turned slightly. Oisín lost his balance. His hand slipped, and he fell. Only a little distance. Only from horse to earth. But some distances are wider than the sea. His feet touched Irish soil. At once, the years found him. They came like winter light, quiet, pale, certain. 300 winters, 300 springs, 300 autumns of leaves falling where he had not seen them fall. They settled over him, all at once. His limbs weakened, his back bent, his hair, once dark and bright, turned white as sea foam. The strength of youth passed from him like sunlight leaving a hill. Before the men could move, the tall rider had become an old man on the ground. The white horse stepped back. Its eyes were full of deep, wordless sorrow. Oisín reached toward it. For a moment, he saw not the road, nor the frightened men, nor the rain falling around him. He saw Niamh on the shore of Tir na nOg, her golden hair in the sea wind, her hand against his face. "Do not touch the ground." The white horse turned, slowly, as though every step pained it. Then it moved away toward the west, across the wet road, through the fading light, toward the sea. Oisín watched until it vanished into rain and distance. He knew then that he would not return to Tir na nOg, not as he had promised. Not in the body he had carried from that bright land. The men gathered around him. They were gentle, for they understood that something beyond ordinary understanding had happened. They wrapped him in a cloak. They lifted him carefully. One offered water, another spoke words of comfort. Oisín thanked them. His voice was thin now, but still there was music in it. They asked his name. He told them, and when they heard it, they looked at one another in wonder, for the name belonged to legend, to a world thought gone, to stories told by firelight. And yet, here he was, old beyond measure, living, breathing, filled with memories no one else could carry. In some versions of the tale, Oisín is brought to St. Patrick, and there, between the old Ireland and the new, he tells the stories of the Fianna. He speaks of Fionn, of the hunts, of the songs, of the wild hills before the roads changed. He speaks with the ache of one who has loved two worlds and lost them both. Tonight, we do not need to follow every word of that meeting. Let us imagine instead the old poet resting by a fire once more. The room is quiet. Rain taps softly on the roof. A small flame moves in the hearth. People sit around him, listening. Outside, Ireland is dark and breathing. The hills remain. The rivers remain. The sea remains. And Oisín, with white hair and tired hands, begins to remember. He remembers the Fianna not as great figures carved into legend, but as men alive beneath the weather. He remembers the sound of their laughter across a valley. He remembers hounds shaking water from their coats after crossing a stream. He remembers Fionn's silence at dawn. He remembers the taste of blackberries gathered from a hedgerow in late summer. He remembers the smell of leather, pine smoke, and rain. He remembers Niamh. Always Niamh. And when he speaks of Tir na nOg, the room seems to grow softer. The listeners lean closer. The fire lowers its voice. He tells them of a shore beyond the western sea, of a white horse stepping over waves, of orchards where blossoms never fade, of music that rises beneath the stars, of a land where the heart can rest from the burden of years. He tells them of Niamh's kindness, of her patience, of the sadness in her eyes when he chose to return. And as he speaks, the old world and the bright world rest together inside him. Ireland with its rain and stone, Tir na nOg with its orchards and endless light. The The mortal leaf turning gold, the immortal apple blooming forever, the fire burning low, the music still sounding far away. Oisín speaks until the listeners grow drowsy. One by one, their heads bow. The rain continues. The fire settles, and the old poet's voice becomes slower, more spacious, as though he is no longer telling the story, but walking through it. He is back on the western shore. The sand is pale beneath his feet, though in memory he is young again and light of heart. The white horse waits at the edge of the tide. Niamh stands beside it. The sky behind her glows with the soft gold of a land beyond grief. But from the east, over Ireland, comes the smell of rain, and from the west comes music. He stands between them, between two loves, between two worlds, between the rain and the light. The tide moves in, the tide moves out. Nothing hurries. The stars appear, and the story begins to loosen its hold. Now the night grows deeper. The room with the fire becomes quiet. The old names drift like smoke toward the rafters. Fionn, Niamh, Oisín, Tir Nanog. They are no longer names to remember sharply, only sounds moving gently in the dark. Outside, the rain has softened to mist. It lies over the fields, over the old walls, over the blackthorn hedges and the narrow roads. It gathers in the hollows and turns the moonlight silver. Somewhere, far away, the sea continues its patient breathing. A wave rises, a wave falls. A wave folds itself into foam upon the shore. Beyond that shore, perhaps, there is still a light no map can name. Perhaps the white horse runs there still, across green fields, under an endless evening. Perhaps Niamh walks in the orchards where petals fall and do not fade. Perhaps when the wind comes from the west, she pauses and listens for a song, for a voice, for some soft trace of the mortal world she once loved through Oisín. And perhaps Ireland listens too. The hills listen, the lakes listen. The stones, older than memory, keep their own quiet watch. They have seen many things pass, warriors and kings, songs and languages, footsteps, fires, prayers, and rain. They have seen sorrow come and go like weather. They have seen love vanish from sight and remain in the land like warmth held deep in stone. Tonight, there is nothing more to do, nothing to solve, nothing to hold tightly. Only the old tale moving more and more slowly now, like a boat drifting from the shore, like mist crossing a moonlit field, like the last ember settling in the hearth. Oisín has ridden far. Niamh has waited beyond the sea. The Fianna have become story. The white horse has vanished into the west, and the night is gentle, very gentle. The waves breathe in, the waves breathe out. The grass bends softly under the mist. The stars lean over the dark hills, and somewhere beyond the edge of waking, there is music, so faint now, so peaceful. A harp beneath the water, a voice beyond the shore, a memory of Ireland, green and shining, held in the quiet heart of the sea. Let the tale rest there, on the western water, under the patient stars, where the land of youth glows softly in the distance, and the old world sleeps beneath a silver rain. The fire is low, the road is empty, the tide is turning, and all across the hills and fields the night gathers everything into stillness, softly, slowly, until even the story becomes a dream, and the dream becomes the sea, and the sea becomes silent.